Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. First item on the agenda tonight is, Bill, you're making an announcement about our Moody's Investor Service?
Yes, sir. This time of year, the last couple months, Moody's, they poured over our financials in our community, and I'm happy to report that we remain at AA1, which is the second to the highest credit rating a government agency can receive. So we are just making the announcements, and that's pretty good. This year we've been affected, as council knows, a lot by the pandemic financially, and also by the inflation. So we were happy to maintain our AA1 rating.
Very good, very good. Good job. Next is a check presentation to St. Vincent de Paul Food Bank for the proceeds from the Carpenter Cross bike race.
So we had our fourth annual Carpenter Bike Race, and I'll let Mr. Haggerty say a few words about the bike race. But for those that don't know, St. Vincent de Paul, which operates out of St. Catherine's Church on Whitmer Road, they are our local food bank. So they're servicing, the last I understood, about 75 families, and they help them with food. Sometimes they have to help them with finances. When a resident needs emergency shelter, they also step up to make sure the resident has a place to stay overnight. So they do amazing work. So our proceeds from the Carpenter Park race goes to St. Vincent de Paul Food Bank in Horsham. And I'll let Mr. Haggerty say a few words about the bike race.
I don't want to jinx us, but for the fourth year in a row, we'd had the most beautiful weather that we could have. Bright blue skies, nice and crisp. And last weekend in September, we had another great turnout for our fourth year, really looking for big things in our fifth year, kind of anniversary year. So it's hard to believe that it's been 5 years, minus the COVID year. But another great event that Horsham has.
Wonderful. So we have a check here to present to Steve. You want to come on up here? It's not made out to you, unfortunately.
We're going to do a photo presentation.
We got a bigger check. Yeah, there you go.
Do you want to? Did you want to say a few words?
Say a few words and just step up to the mic if you would.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for their generous donations to our food pantry. Through the help of the township and through other donors we have in the community, like Bill was saying, we have between anywhere 75, some weeks 100 people we help. We just gave out 113 Thanksgiving meals a few weeks ago, and the Pack the Patrol food drive, Pack the Patrol car food drive is coming up in a few weeks at Giant, and that really helps us out because with inflation, we're really it's harder for us to buy food, and donations have gone down because obviously people are struggling to balance their own budget at the same time. So we're doing okay, but this really will help us have many months of food through the Pack the Patrol food drive. But the township's great, and we get lots of between this donation and individual township residents give us lots of money to help out people for all the things we need to do. So from everybody at the pantry, we really appreciate all of your help. And we also we're open for anyone that, if you know someone in the community that needs help, we're open every Saturday from 10 to 12. If someone needs food, just come and get it, no questions asked. We're there to help you. We get a lot of, over a year, we distributed close to $300,000 worth of food, and most of that's donations. And we have to buy food ourselves, but we do distribute a lot of food. But again, we thank everybody for their help, and if anybody's interested in donating food, they can come by the church and put it in the back. And there's a shopping cart there in the back. Or on Saturdays, we're there from, again, 10 to 12. So any help is always appreciated, but thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Come up and get your check.
And do a photo.
Do a little photo. Okay. Ready.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, next item is an opportunity for questions and comments from the public. Anybody? That's great. All right, good night. Next will be approval of the list of checks. We have a motion.
I move to approve the list of checks in all funds in the amount of $656,127.83, and further move to authorize payment of the same.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We have a zoning hearing board application.
Yes, sir, you only have one this evening. It's a residential on Park Road, 304 Park Avenue, in our R2 district. The resident is looking to knock down their existing house. I'll put it up here real quick for you. They're looking to keep the garage, knock down the rest of the house. This is the proposed dwelling. My pointer's not working, so we'll go to the old-fashioned pointer. So this is the existing garage here that they want to remain. This is Park Road here. This is the new dwelling here that he would build. The old house would be knocked down, but again, he's keeping the existing garage. So he needs two variances. One is for impervious coverage. In this zoning district, they are allowed 20% impervious coverage. Currently, there's 16.54%, and with this plan, it goes to 22.5% on the property. And the second variance is a side yard setback. Currently, there's 38.32 feet in aggregate between the two side yards. This side yard is 8 feet, and this side yard is 30 feet. So right now, so this would go down to 20 feet. This would remain at 8 feet where the existing garage stops. So those are the two variances that are needed for this project to move forward. The staff's recommendation is neutral on the application.
Have any questions? Everybody's okay? All right. We shall go neutral. Next is consider resolution for a waiver of land development for the Horsham Soccer Association.
This is for their artificial turf field. They were in front of you at your last meeting requesting a waiver of land development for the turf field, and this is just the resolution for you to consider the waiver of land development.
I move to approve the resolution as proposed, approving a waiver of land development with conditions for Horsham Soccer Association, 1100 Limekiln Pike, for the construction of synthetic turf fields.
Second.
Moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote.
Ms. Harmon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Nesbitt, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wade, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Whiteside, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Mr. McCouch, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, next is consider amending a Horsham Township grant application for the Myria.
So as council's aware, in May, we just submitted a grant application to Myria, the Military Installation, Remediation, and Infrastructure Authority. And the grant application was for to help with construction costs at Limekiln Pike and Horsham Road with that construction project. Due to right-of-way acquisition delays, that project has slipped to spring of 2024. We had hoped that it would go to construction in the fall of 2023. So in front of you this evening, we have an amended grant application for Myria. So instead of funding construction cost at Limekiln and Horsham, we'll apply for that in May of 2023 for construction in 2024. But for this grant application in front of you this evening, as you know, the construction costs for the Blair Mill Road widening Phase 2 came in 20% over budget. So we are moving forward with that to cover the cost of that increase. That is one project to amend for the grant application. The second is to start the engineering for Phase 3 of the widening of Blair Mill Road between 63 and 611. That is the final phase that would widen Blair Mill Road to 5 lanes. So this grant would help with engineering to start for that project. Also, it would also cover engineering costs to start up to replace the bridge on Horsham Road in front of Kohler Park. as you know, when this project gets done in 2024 up the street here, we'll have this short segment between Babylon Road and our township building that will not match the 5 lanes further down Horsham Road and with this intersection improvement. So it would start the engineering costs to replace the bridge in front of Kohler Park on Horsham Road. Also, the widening of 611 in the future, the next plan for that is estimated to cost $300,000 engineering plan, and then an economic development program fund that we are working on establishing here in Horsham to have incentives for companies and businesses to come to Horsham. It's $350,000. So all of those would take the place in 2023 of the construction at the corner, up here at the corner. So that's the amendment.
Any questions? If not, do we have a motion?
I move to authorize amending the Military Installation Remediation and Infrastructure Authority grant application for 2022.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next is the review of our 2023 budget.
The 2023 budget is still on course. Our 2023 budget is $19,931,662. It's still a balanced budget, and it's on track for your hearing and consideration on December 14th. The latest version has been put into your Dropbox folder and will be on the township website tomorrow.
Any questions? Any questions? We're running out of reasons why you people are here. So next is to consider appointing the landscape architect.
Our landscape architect, Mikulski and Faber, who has been the landscape architect for Horsham Township for probably over 40 years, they are retiring and faster than the end of this year. So we need some coverage right now temporarily until you have time to address this in January. So the staff is recommending appointing Gilmore and Associates, which is our township engineer. They do have a landscape department in their firm, can take over landscape architectural services on a temporary basis until you address this in January.
Good. Do we have a motion?
I move to appoint Gilmer and Associates to temporarily provide landscape architectural services to the township.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, last item is a presentation of a revised concept plan for townhouses at 726 Norristown Road.
Council received a presentation back in June from the developer, Sal Peone, for this tract of land. At that meeting, there was a lot of comments brought up by the residents and this council. They have submitted a second presentation to us. They have not submitted any formal plans to the township. So this is what we call an informal presentation. So the public can hear what their plans are and council can ask questions. The public can ask questions. And they are here tonight. They did revise their plans from June, and they're here to present their revised plans this evening.
You're up.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Pianzio from Hamburg, Rubin, Mullen, Maxwell, and Lupin. I'm a land use attorney. I'm here with Bruce Goodman, Sal Peone Jr., Dominic Peone, Sam Peone, Tim Woodrow's our civil engineer, and Matt Hammond is our traffic engineer. We were here in June. It was June 8th earlier this year to talk about this property. At the time, we were proposing 45 units. It's about 14 acres on Norristown Road. It abuts the commercial development along Welsh Road with the bank on the corner all the way down to the CVS. Since that time, we got a lot of comment from the first time we were here. We took those comments, we went back, we revised some things, and we want to share that with you. Just for the benefit of the people who are here who might not have been here when we were here back in June, I'd just like to just go over a little of the background as to how we got here. And also, what we're proposing right now is a change in the zoning that would permit a townhouse use on this property. What we're not here to talk about our land development issues, although they're very important. As you know, that process comes later. We do have Tim here, who's our civil engineer. I don't expect him to say much. We know that stormwater management is very important to Horsham Township. You have probably the strictest stormwater management ordinance I've ever encountered. We have to treat everything like a meadow and hold our water as if it's returned to meadow. So those conversations are very useful and important, but for later. We do know that traffic is the most important issue, and I know that's why the majority of the people are here this evening. Traffic is a major concern, especially at the intersection of Norristown and Welsh, and so we do want to bring you up to speed on that. So this is just an aerial photo. It depicts the outline of the property that we showed you back in June. If we could go to the next slide. As you're aware, Montgomery County Planning Commission did a study called Monco 2040. They looked at areas within the county and designated those for growth, no growth, redevelopment, repurposing structures, and Horsham was included in that study. Sal sat on that committee, as did your township manager, and they've identified this section of the township as the town residential area. The next slide is an excerpt of the study, which talks about what they call a community mixed use and services. Because this area has such a quadrant of commercial, we have the commercial on Welsh Road on both sides of Norristown Road. We have the triangle of commercial where Maple Glen Pizza is, to the gas station, to the corner where the car wash is, across the street, the giant shopping center, all the way down to Upper Dublin where it continues on Limekiln Pike. And then as you step away, we have residential. And in this case, this property sits between that dense commercial development and single-family detached dwellings. The county looked at this as a transition area. This property in particular was defined in their study as a transition zone, which would be perfect for a townhouse use. No longer do planners like to put single-family detached dwellings up against commercial. A transition use is a higher density, and then you step it down to a lower density. So what we're proposing is in line with this study and kind of brought us to meet with you at the onset in June. Next slide, please. So the Payon family has been builders in Montgomery County for a long time. This is a rendering that we showed you, which would be the view of the townhouse product that we are proposing along Norristown Road. They have built similar products in White Marsh. Coal Point is one that comes to mind. There's another one, something Hollow. What's the other one? Okay. He has a bunch. But this is the product that we want to do here. You see the dormers. We have different elevations. There's hardscaping and landscaping along the frontage. We tried to pull the buildings back as far as we could from Norristown Road to give that streetscape and the ability to incorporate hardscaping and landscaping and fencing for this kind of look along the frontage, while not pushing the development back against the residential that surrounds this property on the other sides. Next slide, please. So this was the plan we showed you in June. This is 45 townhouse units. It's about 14 acres in size. As you can see on the rendering, we've kept these large swaths of open space along the residential perimeter, the basin as well, to buffer the residential, to keep the environmentally sensitive land intact and undisturbed. We proposed a trail system to connect to CVS. There was mixed feelings about connecting it to Misty Hollow. That's up for discussion at some point in the future. But this was the plan that we showed you. This was the one that we got comments on. Some of the comments that were extended to us were, of course, the traffic. The township asked us to submit our traffic study to the township, which we've done. Matt Hammond and Traffic Planning and Design came up with the design for improvements at Welsh and Norristown Road. They've worked with PennDOT to make what is now a 2-lane approach with a shared right and through and just the separated left into a 3-lane approach to eliminate the queue that happens and backs up on Norristown Road. We've all sat through this, and council and the residents asked us to bring in a graphic to show how that queue length exists today and how it would improve with the improvements that we are proposing. Another comment was to look at getting a dedicated left turn into the site. That required us to obtain right-of-way across the street. We've been able to accomplish that. Other comment was there's no emergency access as we have a long cul-de-sac with a bulb here. One of the safety concerns was see if you can get emergency access to get another way into the property. Another comment was add more off-street parking. Not only add more, but scatter it throughout the community. Reforestation is a major concern. We all live through Ida. We know what this property looks like now. It's a mess. If we were to be able to move forward with the rezoning, we can start that reforestation now while we go through the permit process so that we can get the property looking better than it does today, for sure. Next slide. So since we were here, we were able to acquire a parcel here, the Centola parcel, and a portion of the Gouder tract so that we were able to redesign the property. This does reflect 8 additional units. It does show that now we have a loop through here that we didn't have before, instead of just the cul-de-sac length. We were able to achieve an emergency access here, eliminating the Centola shared use of the Gouder driveway. We can now have an emergency access off of this area. We did submit the traffic study. Matt's going to talk about that. We were able to add 31 additional off-street parking spaces, which we've scattered throughout the property. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt. I think traffic is probably the hottest topic in the room, so I might as well put the heat on Matt and let him walk you through what we were able to do with the improvements along the frontage, what we're proposing for the intersection, and how things will change from today with this development.
Thank you, Kristen. And again, Matt Hammond with Traffic Planning and Design. If you could go to the next slide, please. What this slide shows here is just a blown-up version of the previous slide, but what it shows is some of the improvements that we were able to achieve or are being proposed in conjunction with the development. As Kristen had mentioned, obviously traffic is always a major consideration as it relates to development in any municipality. But what this plan shows is that we are able to provide some widening along this area here, and as Kristen had mentioned, as you're approaching Norristown Road or approaching Welsh Road on Norristown Road, there's currently a separate left turn lane and then a shared through right in front of the Key Bank. One of the concerns that was expressed to us is the extensive queue that extends beyond the site frontage and further up Norristown Road in certain instances during the peak hours, morning and the afternoons during a typical weekday. So we were charged with looking at what we could do to reduce the queue, not eliminate it, but reduce that queue and provide some improvement to the intersection, being that this intersection is somewhat a non-traditional type design. And what I mean by that is if you're coming from the other direction, from the Upper Dublin side, when you approach Welsh Road on Norristown Road, it's a separate right turn lane and then a shared through left, where you're opposed currently by a separate left and a shared through right. So what we're able to achieve, and it may be hard to see, it's a little bit in the green here, but we're able to achieve a 3-lane approach so that when you're coming down Norristown Road to Welsh Road, you have a separate left turn lane onto southbound Welsh Road, a separate through lane to get you across the intersection, and a separate right turn lane. Now obviously, the township, the developer of this bank parcel here, had some foresight to provide for some widening for the future expansion or potential expansion of Norristown Road. So we're able to use some of that room here. But a lot of the widening that would be necessary to effectuate that improvement would occur not only on the corner here, you can see a little bit on the corner here, very limited right of way to work with, but a lot of that would occur on the south side of Norristown Road. In addition, again, we were tasked with providing a dedicated left turn lane into the site so that anyone waiting to make a left into the development would not preclude someone who wanted to travel or continue down or up Norristown Road. So this shows this gore area here, the striping, and then a dedicated left turn lane into the driveway, and then the associated taper that would extend beyond further down the property. So again, starting from Welsh Road down past the property, you would have a 3-lane approach to Welsh Road, and then essentially 3 lanes in the area of the driveway, 1 approaching Welsh, 1 departing Welsh, and a separate left turn lane. You can go to the next slide, please. And what that is able to allow us to do is reduce some of the queuing that exists at the intersection. I want everyone to be clear, we're not here saying that we're solving the queuing. We're solving all of the issues that may or may not exist at the intersection. What we're able to do is improve the operations of the intersection, improve the safety, and reduce the queuing that is currently experienced. When we reduce the queues at the intersection, you're able to get more traffic through that intersection. You're able to have it run more efficiently. So what this shows at the top left of this exhibit is the existing conditions. This red representing the queue for the left turn.
And Q, Matt, is backing up, right?
The queue is how far the cars extend back. And what we look at, it's called the 95th percentile queue. I don't want to get too detailed, I don't want to confuse everyone in this riveting world of traffic engineering. But essentially what this is the 95th percentile queue that traffic extends back past. And this is where the driveway is depicted here for serving the development. So this yellow represents the queue for the through and right movements during a typical AM peak hour. And that AM peak hour is approximately anywhere between 7 and 9 a.m. on a typical weekday, Monday through Friday. And again, this red here is the left turn queue. The bottom left is once the improvements are in place, you'll see now we have 3-lane approach. The green represents the right turn queue, the yellow represents the through queue, and the red represents the left queue. And you'll notice, comparing the top and bottom here, there's a significant reduction in the queue. Similarly, on the right-hand side is the PM peak hour, and that's usually the one highest hour of traffic between 4 and 6 p.m. on a typical weekday. Again, you'll see the left turn or the through right queue extends back past this proposed driveway. And then on the bottom, you'll see it's significantly reduced by providing those improvements. And that also, again, allows us to improve the traffic signal timings and the operation of that intersection. So we are able to not only, like I said, reduce the queue, but also provide for a left turn lane into the site. And by providing those improvements, not precluding the ability for someone to make a left in addition to the fact that we're providing for a dedicated left turn lane into the intersection. As Kristen had mentioned, we prepared a traffic study. That traffic study was completed mid-summer. I believe it was June or June of this year. The traffic study was submitted to the township for review. Prior to that traffic study being completed, we had extensive coordination with PennDOT to determine if the roadway improvements that we would propose or we could effectuate would be approved by PennDOT if this project were to move forward, being that obviously Norristown and Welsh Road are both state roadways. We wanted to make sure, because the intersection was somewhat non-traditional, that the PennDOT would be on board with providing the improvements. I can tell you that what we have provided for is different than what we had started with, and that is based on the coordination that occurred with PennDOT. But again, we submitted the traffic study. We received review comments from the township's engineer. I can tell you that all of the comments, or most of the comments in this review letter are well complied and are items that we would continue to work with the township engineer. Obviously, if we're able to move forward, continue to work with the engineer to refine those comments, refine the concept, and then obviously move forward with the necessary plans and permitting. So I think that's pretty much all I have for now.
If you could go, yeah, I wanted to point out one more thing on this plan that's different. The previous plan had this building here was closer to Norristown Road, and it was this way. We were able to turn it and pull it back to enable more space here for the streetscape without moving any further back towards the residential. That's really the highlights of our plan. All of us are here to answer questions and receive your comments.
To explain where the off-site, the parking for, the excess parking is going to be? You said it's scattered throughout, but when I'm looking at it, it looks like it's all in the front.
Here's Tim Woodrow. He'll answer that for you.
Thank you, everybody. So what we have, to Kristen's point, tried to do is introduce parking in a number of locations. So there's certainly parking in front of these units and these units on our, what we're calling roads D and C. But we also have added parking along the frontage of these units here. We've added some additional here, as well as a couple in between each unit. So certainly this is not a final plan yet, but I think what we're trying to do is show everyone our intent and our ability to distribute parking throughout the project. And I think we can make improvements to that, again, if we are successful in the zoning portion of the discussion through the land development process.
Okay, I just didn't see some of the spots you pointed to, where there are some in the back, more in the back, too.
That's correct, Mr. Couch, yes.
Anybody else have any questions off the top of your head right now? All right, so is there anything further you guys need to talk about?
No, we're here for comments and questions.
So obviously, there's a few people here that probably want to make a few comments. What I'd ask is that you come up and use the microphone that'll be over here, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, Dennis is going to put it back.
This one travel, can that make it over here?
I don't, let's see.
Give it our best shot. So if you have a comment or a question for the developer, if you come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the minutes. Is everyone here from Horsham? Is anyone from Upper Dublin? Good, okay. Makes life a lot easier. Everyone will get, time to speak. We do like to hear from the residents. We don't like to shut people out. So everyone who wants to speak will get a chance to speak. We'll try to keep it brief, obviously, because there's a lot of people here. So again, just state your name and address, and then your comment or your question.
Sure. My name's Mary Elizabeth Keys. I actually live in the house on Norristown Road, 722A Norristown Road. My question was, are you not allowed to build single homes here, or what's the problem with that? I didn't understand that explanation.
The property is zoned R3, which does permit single-family detached dwellings. We're here asking for council to consider a townhouse development in its stead. And with that, we are trying to address some off-site improvements that wouldn't otherwise be applicable for a by right zone in the single-family detached dwelling.
Sure. I don't know. I live right there. I don't want townhouses right next to me like that. Literally, my driveway goes right along the side.
Is yours the property in the front or the back? You're in the front?
I am in the front, 722A. And as far as your traffic study that was done in the middle of the summer, when the traffic is probably at its least and everyone's on vacation, I can tell you when I come out of my driveway every morning, I have to wait a good 5 minutes. So I would say it's more accurate for the traffic to be blocked up to Presidential, at least.
Sure. And just to clarify, the date of the study was June. The actual traffic, the data that was collected, the counts was done in April of 2022. It included background growth, and it's also important to note that it included another residential development in the other Upper Dublin side, just further down Norristown Road at Limekiln Pike that's being proposed currently.
Right.
It also included traffic associated with that, as well as just general growth in traffic. And as I mentioned earlier, the exhibits I was showing was what we classify as a 95th percentile queue. So there are times, obviously, when the queue extends back past that point.
Sure.
But as traffic engineers, we look at that certain amount of time when you experience the majority.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I just wanted to express that, you know, if it's perfectly acceptable to build single homes, then go for it. But to build 50 whatever additional homes and add all of those people in the rush hour times, it's going to mess up everyone that already lives in that area.
Eric, Bill, just as a reference, the zoning, current zoning would allow for how many homes?
Hi, how are you? Good.
It would be 10 to 12 single-family homes.
Want to throw that out as a reference number, that's all. Okay, ma'am.
Hi, how are you? My name is Jill Zippin. I live in the Reserve at Horsham, so I'm on Presidential. I'm here actually in support of the development. I think it actually beautifies our community. It's going to give us sidewalks. I can't walk to the Giant without risking my life. Sidewalks will go in there. Right now, it looks awful with all the dead trees. I think there's going to be beautiful green space. I had the opportunity to review the plans at length. I think the community is beautiful, and my concern, too, if anyone knows me and development in Horsham, I was concerned about traffic, but once I saw the improvements, including the dedicated turn lanes, it alleviated any concerns I had about that. And you know me from being here in the past, I really care about this community and where I live. I just renovated my house. I want to live here another 25 years in Horsham Township. And I think this will only add to the beauty of the township and make it more walkable and more environmentally friendly. I don't have to take my car to go to the dry cleaners or the Giant or wherever. This is not commercial. This is residential. And I think it'll actually add, at least from my perspective, to my property values. So.
Hey, thank you. Just as a note, when you do come up to speak, if you could get as close to the mic as possible, because that's okay. I don't want to interrupt you, but it's all being recorded, and if you're not, he can't hear you, and he'll nod and say, got to speak up. So just try to get as close as possible.
I'm Suzanne Hessenthaler, 688 Misty Hollow. As the prior person said, I think we all want beautification to our area. We want it walking friendly. And we all know currently this traffic rerouting and additional lanes needs to be done whether there's any additional houses or not. So therefore, why not keep it in the single family like everyone else around? It'll add less to the traffic. It'll still make everything beautiful. It doesn't need to be rezoned to cram in townhouses. This rerouting of the traffic is only going to help what is already a problem. It's only going to enhance it, and it's needed whether there's 0 houses built or 10 houses built. Townhouses, it's not zoned for that, and it's not what we need in this area.
Bill, could we address that issue real quick, just on the rezoning versus the by right? If we do a by right plan, is there any requirement for a builder to make improvements to the roadways?
Not with a by right plan. They would not have to do improvements.
That it is a consideration that if it is done by right, there's no requirement for the builder to make any improvements to the roadway. This is why we always try to balance what can be developed and what should be developed and how you can make improvements to the disaster that's already there. Just a comment, not an argument. Go ahead.
Notice how he said disaster and he pointed this way. Hi, Tracy Moss-Carfagno. I'm at 718 Norristown Road. And yes, to agree with everyone else, in the morning and at night, it backs up way past Presidential because I can see, working from home, the traffic is really bad. So obviously, the traffic concerns that I think everybody wants to address here, slightly were addressed, but you put a left lane in, you have a right lane, but we need a left-hand signal as well. One thing that I'm not fully aware of is, why aren't we having a back road? There was discussion about wetlands. Is there not another access point that we could get into that development? I see Greg shaking his head. Okay, that's a point. Second, I'm trying to see.
They're not going to come in from Misty Hollow. Don't have any of the
I thought there was an easement between the CVS, well, between the bank and Brick and Barrel or something, wasn't there?
I don't know.
No?
We've got to cross the wetlands.
Across wetlands, and you got to, and put that traffic right in the middle of
can't
Welsh
cross.
Road that,
Okay.
you know.
And
You
next,
guys live
move
that,
on,
it's not
how many
great.
parking spots are there? Because if you put 53 townhomes in, we're assuming it's going to be 106 cars there, just generally speaking.
You answer that question?
Because that's always a problem with townhome developments, is having the parking and visitors come over and things like that.
Right, and that concern was brought up in June when we were here. So each one of these have 2-car garages, and they have 2 parking spaces in the driveways, and then we've added 53 throughout the site. So in essence, there's 5 parking spaces allocated per unit,
Okay,
or
so-
on the units and 53 out among the development.
And I'm glad to hear there's sidewalks going in, but is that sidewalk going from where to where?
Along the frontage of the property and then within the entire development. And then we have a trail, and that might be what you were referring to. There's a trail that connects the back end of the property, through there to the CVS. That's something we're proposing to go through the open space.
So the question being is, if you get this traffic approved, will we have that in writing prior to the building thereof? And have you already discussed taking the land on the left side for the bank, from the bank?
So we're not proposing to take any land from the bank. We don't have the ability to obviously take land. What we do need, and maybe, I don't know if we could back up, maybe a couple slides. No, maybe move forward, sorry. Keep going, one more. There you go. So there's already widening that exists along the frontage of this bank here. Where the widening that we need to provide occurs is along the south side here, this frontage area here. That has been, the developer has had discussions with those property owners about acquisition of that right-of-way in order to effectuate these improvements.
Okay.
There's also some minor widening occurring on the corner here, and that would be done within the existing right-of-way at the corner in order to allow those 3 lanes approach. I would also, one thing just to clarify and point out, and I think I missed mentioning before from a traffic perspective, 53 townhomes generates about 22 trips in the morning peak hour and 25 trips in the afternoon peak hour. And when I say trips, that means is you would experience during those peak hours 22 vehicles in and out of the driveway in the time that everyone has talked about, it being the busiest on Northtown Road in the morning. And then in the afternoon, about 25 trips, and that's a total of the cars in and out, right, left, those type of movements. So 53 townhomes, I just want to put in perspective, is not a huge traffic generator. Obviously, there's an issue that exists out there, and we're looking to try to resolve that issue or improve that issue to the extent possible. But from a traffic perspective, this is not a very large traffic generator when it comes to, developments or what could be developed or what is typically developed in this area.
And who are these townhomes geared towards? Are we talking over 50? What?
You're hitting the whole team. This is
They're not going to be age restricted, which would be a 55 and over community. They would be available to anybody who could buy it. Usually our buyers that we find are not first-time buyers. They're either move-down buyers, so they would fall into that retiring demographic. They may want a first-floor master, or it's a family that has kids who could be in school, but they're moving up from a smaller home into a larger home. These homes are probably in the 2,500 square foot, maybe 3,000 square foot range. That doesn't include a basement, that doesn't include a garage, so they're not small.
$500,000 and up?
Easily. Probably approaching the $700,000 range and into.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Can I ask, I'm sorry. I just had a quick question. If 50-some townhomes generates 22 trips, what would the currently allotted 12 homes generate?
12 would
that be
gen-
like 5 trips?
No, so single-family homes typically, multiplier-wise, generate a little bit more per unit. Bear with me 1 second. So 12 single-family homes would generate about 11 trips in the morning and about 13 trips in the afternoon. So 53 townhomes, why it's 4.5 times the amount, it only generates twice as much. But the twice as much sounds like a lot, but in reality, it's 22 trips and 25 or 28 trips in the afternoon.
I'm sorry, how is it that 53 homes generates so many less trips?
You mean 53 homes generates?
Well, you have 53 townhomes is 22 trips.
Right,
12 single homes is only 11 trips.
correct. It's because, so the information that we utilize is based on counts that are conducted at specific operating facilities, whether it be a CVS, whether it be a single-family home, residential development, or a townhouse development. What you find is that people who live in single-family homes typically have multiple cars, multiple drivers, teenagers going to work, going to school, whereas townhomes, you don't necessarily experience that as much as you do in a single-family residential development, so they tend to generate more trips per unit than does a townhouse.
Hey, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Trish Lawler, and I don't know if any of the council members recognize me, but you guys graciously gave me a commendation several months ago for picking up trash in the township. And while I agree with all of the comments about traffic, and my concerns are about traffic also, I want to take the developer out of this discussion and look at all of you and say, you live here. We live here. There are a lot of houses here. I moved to Horsham for the ambiance, for the environment, for the fields that we have to walk on, the walking paths. I pick up trash here because I want everybody to want to live in Horsham, but I don't want 7 million people to live in Horsham. And I think we can't stop development. I get that. I was in real estate for my entire career with Cushman and Wakefield. I understand. I understand their perspective. Their perspective is put as many as you can. My perspective living here is I want to be comfortable here. I want to have an environment. If I wanted to live with 1 million houses and 1 million people on top of me, I would have stayed in Northeast Philadelphia, frankly. And I would... So I'm appealing to all of you. You're elected officials for us. I'm here to talk to you because plans are great. They all sound great. I've presented plans to people that I tried to sell to. When you're driving down Norristown Road after this development goes in, whether there's 12 houses or whether there's 54 houses, I hope you say, I voted with my neighbors, I voted with my conscience, and I want to keep Horsham going in the direction that it's going because it's a great place to live. And thank you for all the jobs that you have done so far.
Hi, my name is Denise Giannetti. I live at 6 Oxford Circle. I understand the traffic, but what happens when Upper Dublin builds on that corner there? We're talking lots of problems again.
So as I mentioned, I'm also involved in that project as well. So when I completed the traffic study associated with this development, I included the traffic associated with that development. 72 townhomes proposed at the corner of Lime Kiln and Norristown Road. So that traffic has already been accounted for in this study and vice versa. I would also note that as part of that development, there are significant improvements that are being done at the next intersection, Norristown and Lime Kiln, whereas turn lanes are being provided. There's widening that extends about 1,000 feet along the frontage of that property from Lime Kiln further down, past Chaucer Circle further left, further west. There's also improvements being done at the intersection of Welsh and Lime Kiln. There's extensive pedestrian facilities being proposed at that development. So all of that is being taken into account for not only that development, but for this one as well.
Okay, and I lived in the Northeast, left, because I didn't want to be stuck in a townhouse development. I don't really think it's a good idea for here. And what are the benefits to Horsham of having townhouse development? Don't we need more schools, more traffic, more this, more that, more this, with townhomes than individual single-family dwellings?
I can't personally speak to the benefits of a townhouse per se. I can tell you the benefit of this development from a traffic perspective is the fact there's a significant amount of roadway improvements that come along with this development that will help to address some of the concerns that the residents have expressed for over a year at this point.
Okay, just not happy about it.
Hello, my name is Colleen Hogan, 652 Maple Glen Circle. I was wondering if you brought the thing of the single homes, the plot plan for the singles. Is that here?
No.
No.
So with the singles, did you also plan on curbs and sidewalks along Norristown Road?
We didn't. We're not proposing a single-family detached dwelling development, so we didn't design it and.
Well, you had a plan in June when we were here. The single plan was up, unless you're saying no, it wasn't?
No.
I thought that singles were here, brought. Okay. But no thought was put to those singles. I mean, I know you're talking about improving Norristown with the walkability and that type of thing.
So I think what President McCouch was alluding to when asked about the by right plan, if we were to do a single-family detached dwelling by right plan, these off-site improvements wouldn't be part of that development. So by law, the township can require us to do improvements along our frontage. They can extract a traffic impact fee, but they can't make a developer do off-site improvements. We came knowing that there's an existing issue at this intersection, and we didn't want to exacerbate it, and we needed to do our share, in our opinion, to help rectify it. So not only are we dealing with an existing problem that exists today and how we can help it, but it will go further than to mitigate what the townhouses will bring. This is an existing issue that we're trying to solve with our portion of our share along Norristown Road.
Okay, then I would also just like to say, in agreement with everybody else, that again, it is true that you are neighbors and the developer does want to put in as many as possible, and then they move on to the next whatever, the next site, the next township, whatever. So I am also asking that you please take this seriously into consideration of minimizing the amount of new residents, traffic, etc. Thank you.
Hello, Tom Bender, 27 Oxford Lane.
Sorry,
Again,
Tom, what was your last name?
Tom Bender, Bender.
Thank you.
And again, I don't have a direct question, it's more holistic. Again, we're looking to do traffic studies and fix traffic issues by new construction, but we already have an existing problem. I mean, go Herman Road to Norristown, morning or evening. Go Norristown or Horsham Road up to the corner by the First Street, the gas station and stuff, any time of day. And the traffic is it's a huge problem already. We need to do traffic studies to fix it before we do any more building. I mean, this is all fine and good to accommodate the additional issues we're going to have, but we already have issues. We're just compounding it. We're not fixing anything by fixing traffic just to accommodate the new buildings. We need to fix traffic in here, period. And that's really my point.
Sure. I'm John Hessethar. I live on Misty Hollow Drive. I just have one concern that it's already a problem. Everybody knows the traffic's a problem and all that, but also the speed limits through the Maple Glen Triangle, like Welsh, Norristown, Limekiln. I can remember there used to be a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit sign on Welsh Road there, across from Maple Gun Pizza, which was just ridiculous. They took it down. But I believe it's still 40 on all three of those roads. Already, that's too fast. If we're going to open this up for more volume of traffic, especially coming down Norristown Road, we need to have the speed limits reduced through that area to 35, even 25. Like, you go through Ambler and it's 25. This is kind of our business district, just like Ambler. Why can't we have the speed limits reduced?
So I will tell you that I believe Welsh Road is still 45 miles per hour. But in terms of reducing speed limits, it's not, they're PennDOT roadways that PennDOT would have to determine whether or not it's appropriate to reduce speed limits. Reduction of a speed limit doesn't necessarily mean that people will travel slower. People will drive how they.
That's what we have police for, right?
People will drive how they feel comfortable. So if the road is designed to accommodate a 40 mile per hour speed limit, the people will drive 40 or 45 or maybe even 50 miles per hour. So just simply putting signs out there to say the speed limit's now 30 miles an hour is not necessarily going to slow traffic down. But at the end of the day, to answer your question, that's something that PennDOT would need to look at, and PennDOT would need to determine whether or not it's appropriate to reduce the speeds.
Does our council talk to PennDOT, or who talks to them?
Well, generally speaking, we have a traffic people that speak with PennDOT, and again, just from experience, getting PennDOT to do anything.
Isn't it worth talking to them about?
Oh, I'm
this
sure
right now?
we've.
Forget about the development, right? What
We've
about
told,
right now?
if I had a nickel for every time somebody asked about reducing speed limits on our roads,
Okay.
I'd be a rich
All right,
person.
so-
And we've talked to PennDOT on many roads, but unfortunately, in the reality of it, and it's sad, but the reality of it is until somebody dies, they really don't want to do anything about it.
Well, we have millions of accidents at Limekiln and Walsh all the time.
I hear you.
So-
Trust me. We've gone through this many a times and
Okay.
very frustrating,
Great.
but PennDOT's well, you know PennDOT.
So what I would offer, though, is that obviously if we're able to move forward and I get to the point where I'm coordinating with PennDOT on the design of these improvements, I would be more than happy to talk to them about the possibility of reducing the speeds. I can't promise anything, but I'd be more than happy to bring that issue up with them as part of the overall design.
Hi.
I'm Linda Goodwin, I'm 663 Maple Glen Circle. You talk about putting in these townhouses to make a transition between commercial property and the big homes. We're the big homes. All of us are the big homes, and you're just shoving a bunch of townhouses right in the middle of us. You're not transitioning anything, honestly. Keep it the way it is. It's already big homes. Keep it the big homes. Make it 10 houses to 12 houses. Don't just slam townhouses in there and call it transitioning, because we're already there. That's my opinion.
Ma'am.
I'm Chris Priori. I live at 602 Misty Hollow. And is it my understanding that the developer has owned the property for a number of years now?
Yes.
Yes. And when they bought the property, they knew it was zoned R3? Yes. Yes. So again, I also would like to see single-family homes in there instead of townhomes. And I think they should respect the designation that the property already has, despite whatever Montgomery County may think about transitional zones, if you want to call it that. I also think it's kind of interesting that the developer is only willing to improve the road if they're allowed to put in townhomes, and they don't want to improve the road if they're allowed to put in single-family homes. The young lady from Presidential Boulevard across the street, so now is it my understanding also that there are going to be now sidewalks on both sides of Norristown Road?
No, we are only proposing sidewalk along our frontage, along the side of.
So the presidential development we're now going to have people crossing Norristown Road to get to the sidewalk, and now crossing 3 lanes of traffic with the left-hand turn lane, not 2. I also have a concern about the open space on the property, because I'd like to know if you're going to come in and just bulldoze every tree there. And that's our open space now, so there are no trees there. It is a mess because of the storm, but that's why, because of the storm. There are still 30-foot trees there, 30, 40-foot trees there. So now those are all going to be bulldozed as well, and that will completely destroy any buffer, I think.
So to address the trees, Horsham has a very strict tree replacement ordinance. So not only do you incur the cost of taking down a tree, but we have to replace the trees. So
you're going to take down...
if I could just finish.
Okay.
So taking down trees is not something we like to do. So we minimize it as much as possible. The open space area in the back has suffered severe damage from Ida, and we want to reforest that. We've walked through the property with township consultants, including their landscape consultant, as to the health and the horror that exists in the back. So we want to move forward with that reforestation as quickly as possible, so that can have a couple years' worth of growth before the development actually occurs.
When you say reforestation, what does that mean?
I'm
Do
not-
you take down every tree that's in there now and replant, or do you leave existing trees?
I'm not a landscape architect, but I can tell you, you do not take every tree down to plant new trees. So you take out what's dead and dying, and you institute new trees that work well in that environment. I've heard many landscape architects describe the ecosystem that belongs in forests, and that is what we would try to reestablish, which is missing now.
I think Tim wants to add to that.
Oh, here's Tim.
You're not an expert, but you're telling me what's going to happen.
Well, I guess what we would look to do is walk through the remnants of the forest with an arborist and assess the health of those trees. There are certainly trees there that are severely damaged and are not going to survive many more seasons. So we would certainly clear those that are hazard trees, the trees that are in ill health, and ones that couldn't support a good buffer. Take those out, but anything that is viable, anything that has sustained the damage from the tornado, we would leave for sure, and then plant in between those trees with new healthy growth.
All of us in the Misty Hollow Maple Glen Circle neighborhood, I'm sure, like my neighbors, they also have seen trees left, and I'm like, those trees are not going to come back. They did come back this year. They looked horrible, but they are getting new growth on them. So
And that's exactly the kind of thing we would assess, you know.
I want to point out that at the beginning, you started your statement to me with, I guess.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, change my statement. If I said I guess, I didn't mean to.
That's what I'm asking you. Are you guessing? Are you sure?
No, I am sure that that's the protocol that we would follow. Again, next step in the process. But Gilmore Associates would certainly be there. We have an urban arborist that we work with on a very regular basis, that we would ask for some assessment of these trees and their viability, and we would use that as the yardstick to see what should come down and what can't stay and survive.
I guess I'm just expressing a concern about that I don't want to see it bulldozed. And I suspect some of the other neighbors feel the same way.
I think what they're looking for is assurances that if there was this reforestation, the reforestation would take it back to its original state prior to Ida. I think that's what they're looking for, and perhaps one consideration would be that when you do your tree count, the tree count doesn't go to the existing tree count, which we know, obviously, there's a lot of damaged trees back there, but the tree count would include perhaps the original trees and trying to get it back as much as possible, above and beyond what trees you take down on the other area that you're going to be building. I think that certainly is what they would be looking for, is something above and beyond what is by the letter of the law in terms of reforestation.
I also still have a concern about the walking path through as well, because now with the townhome community, you're going to have people coming off that walking trail and coming onto Misty Hollow, which are public streets. But we on Misty Hollow, Maple Glen Circle, in that neighborhood, it's a private townhome community. We wouldn't be able to walk through their neighborhood, correct?
I don't think there's a connection to Misty Hollow.
There is not, but there's a walking trail that pretty much,
There was previously a plan to do a connection.
Can I try to address your questions? I'm sorry.
Sure, I recall that, but This comes awfully close to Mrs. Hollow.
So the idea with the area in dark green, okay, and this predated Ida when we first started looking at this, was to keep that natural, to not touch it with the exception of a pedestrian connection. And usually what happens when we develop a project and you have a pedestrian trail, there's a note that goes on the plan that says, put the trail where the trees aren't, right? And the township's landscape architect comes out and reviews that, and so does the engineer. Unfortunately, the hurricane occurred. So what we would be looking to do is every tree that is healthy, we want to keep. That's always been the plan. That would continue to be the plan. Now, we have to get in there. We have to clean it up because there's a lot of trees that have fallen down, unfortunately. And then we would replant. But the idea of that dark green patch is to be a buffer. It's to protect the homes on Misty Hollow. That was an important part of the concept of the plan. So for the people who said we're trying to jam in as much as we can absolutely, in construction, build bridges over wetlands areas and put more houses in, right? Physically, it fits. We're trying not to do that and to keep that as much of a buffer physically as far as space as well as visual as we can. So you're concerned about us taking a bulldozer in there and knocking those trees over? That doesn't happen. That's not even on the table. And I want to make sure that that's really clear because I've heard
I'm concerned about
that a
that,
few
whether
times.
you build townhomes or single-family homes.
We're not building single-family homes.
Okay, there you go. I also had a question for the township. Because this property is so close to Upper Dublin Township, have they been asked to provide any input yet? Or is it too early for that?
It's actually
Go ahead, Mayor.
early for that. There's a process once, if the zoning ordinance gets passed, which is completely a function of this council and not Upper Dublin, then there would be a land development plan. And the land development plan would be shared with adjacent
Okay.
townships for comments.
Okay, so it's too early.
A little bit early.
Okay, thank you.
Do you need help with the mic?
I can run.
Oh, look at you.
Where do I single order? My name is John Gallagher, and I'm that little white corner up there. And I see this as a great move for a transition between my property and Maple Glen Commercial. My fear is that if it doesn't get developed this way, it's going to end up being commercial zoning eventually. And that I definitely don't want. So I'm all for this transition. And I'm the one right in the corner of it, and the improvements to Norristown Road, as everybody knows, the traffic is horrendous. In the mornings, we cannot go left out of our driveway. We have to go right. So this would be a great improvement. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else?
My name is Bill Resch. I live at 15 Oxford, and this is really to our council. All we need to do is drive down to Sawyer's Way and ride through Sawyer's Way, go on and see all the townhouses that are already here, and they all exit onto Norristown Road. So I don't think we need any more townhouse development along Norristown Road, considering Upper Dublin may be doing this down the road. So if we keep building more townhouses, it's going to look like the Boulevard or Bustleton Avenue in the Northeast. And I don't think anyone wants that here. And let's face it, if the builder does not build townhouses, they're going to build single-family homes eventually, because that's what it's zoned for, unless council changes that. So let's keep it like it is now and hold ground. Okay? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Clayton. I live at 506 Rolling Glen Drive in Horsham, off of Herman Road. There's several things I don't understand about this development and the impact to the area. There's been a lot of focus on what's going to be done between Key Bank and the development for road improvements. That's all well and good, but we've got a diamond. We've got three total intersections here within a quarter mile of one another that you've got queuing going between this intersection, the other intersection, and the other two intersections. You got to look at it holistically. I've yet to hear anything whatsoever about the holistic approach to add intelligence, queuing algorithms, and the analysis of traffic flows around the diamond and through the diamond. And until that is done, and factoring in conceivably what's going to go on down the other side in that wide open area where they just clear cut all the trees after Ida went through, all I see is nothing but a nightmare. To the earlier gentleman's point, the only way out of his house, that white block there, is making a right-hand turn. You're going to put 53 townhomes at somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000. These people are working. They're not staying home. So I don't understand the whole thing about trips for 53 homes being half the count of what the homes are. Somebody's got to be working in those homes. Not everybody's working at home. So there's going to be more cars out there than the 25 trips, 25 to 28 trips that you were talking about earlier, unless I didn't understand the whole context and meaning behind what you were talking about with the trips and how many cars would typically be coming out of that development at peak times. Because if I was in that development, there's no way I'd make a left-hand turn out of that development without a light there. I'd get T-boned very quickly, in all probability, because of the way the traffic flow is going to go through there, particularly if you're going to put two lanes extending back almost to that point where you're going to have to see around to make a left-hand turn and go up the street. So I particularly just don't understand the traffic flows, the analysis for the traffic flows, and what's going to happen with the people that are in that development that need to go out and make a left-hand turn. They're all going to turn around and go right, and they're all going to have to go around that circle to go backwards. It makes no sense, traffic-wise, and it's going to make that whole diamond worse to get around.
So, excuse me, number of comments. I'll try to address them all. So as far as a holistic approach is concerned, I believe I did mention, and if I wasn't clear, I apologize. As part of this development, we looked at, obviously, the intersection of Welsh and Norristown Road, and within that traffic study, within the analysis, within the algorithms, we also included the traffic associated with that development in Upper Dublin, the 72 townhomes that's proposed with access off of Welsh Road and access off of Norristown Road. Part of that development, there's an extensive roadway improvement package proposed at the Triangle. So essentially, you can look at it this way. We're doing a piece, this development is doing a piece of the Triangle, whereas they're doing some improvements on Norristown Road as you approach Welsh. The 72 townhomes proposed in Upper Dublin are doing the intersection of Norristown and Limekiln, as well as some improvements at Welsh and Limekiln. So between the two developments, they're improving that triangle. So within that study, within the analysis that was done, that development was included and taken into account. And vice versa, the traffic study that was done for the 72 townhouse development took into account this development as well, in addition to the roadway improvements associated with this development if it were to move forward. It assumed at a future time that those improvements would be in place. So we took that holistic approach and looked at that whole triangle and took into account the 53 townhomes and the 72 townhomes. And then looked into the future. We didn't just look at, next year or the year after. We looked years into the future, at least 5 years into the future, to determine what we thought the traffic volumes would be at this intersection or these intersections. Because it's not just the traffic associated with this development, it's not just the traffic associated with the other residential development, but it's the traffic associated with growth in the area that just occurs, regular growth that occurs on a daily basis. In terms of not understanding the amount of traffic associated with, excuse me, 53 townhomes, I don't know how to answer that other than to say that during those peak hours, that's what this type of development experiences. And I would say that all of that information and all of that data was collected prior to COVID, where in my opinion, and based on the hundreds of traffic studies and hundreds of developments that I've worked on in my career, I feel that traffic today is actually less than pre-COVID. More people have learned to work from home. More people work from home today. They don't necessarily go into the office. While it's my opinion that traffic is lessened, I still are using the data that was collected prior to COVID, which assumes a certain amount of traffic in and out. So when we did the traffic study, we looked at not only the improvements, but the access point as well, and being able to get in and get out, reduction of the queue that exists today. We did the analysis, we looked at site distance, we looked at all the parameters that we're required to look at and beyond with respect to the township ordinances and with respect to PennDOT, because it's one thing for me to say that all of this works and all of this is better. However, this has to go through a process. This has to be reviewed by the township traffic engineer. This has to be reviewed by PennDOT. And they both have to agree that what we're proposing is an improvement, will mitigate the impact, and will provide for a safe and efficient, for a safe and effective access point in this area. So it's a process that we must go through. We have to obtain not only the land development approvals, but we have to obtain a highway occupancy permit from PennDOT. So it's a long process that we go through, and there'll be additional information that they'll require me to provide. But based on my coordination to date, what I'm saying is that the improvements that we're proposing will reduce some of the problems that are currently experienced by the residents, and the volumes associated with this development are not as high as someone may think. 22 trips in an AM peak hour is not a significant number of trips. That's one every 3 minutes. But that doesn't mean that off-peak between 9 and 10, there's not 20 other trips. Doesn't mean between 6 and 7 a.m., there's not 15 trips. But as a traffic engineer, we look at the peak hours because we want to look at the highest hour of traffic and make sure that if we superimpose the traffic associated with that development onto the roadway network, that we can make it work.
Is there any intelligence today in between the light signals at those 3 major intersections?
Yes, they are coordinated.
How about the next step out in terms of lights further out?
There is a system, I believe, Upper Dublin was implementing, and this was, I want to say 6 to 9 months ago, they were implementing a traffic adaptive system, not only through the triangle, but beyond the extent.
Right.
I could not tell you offhand right now, but I know that they were implementing those, and it asked us to provide them some information, the data that we collected prior to COVID, so they could use that data to help implement some of those changes.
How do we go through and determine just where that stands? Because, I mean, if we fix the diamond, the triangle, I mean, conceivably the problem is just going to move further down. And there's the problem down there at Tennis Avenue and Lime Kiln. There's other red lights that are just going to get jammed up.
With all due respect, these are 2 PennDOT roadways. So at the end of the day, the responsibility should fall on PennDOT. But what tends to happen is that developers come in, look to develop a piece of property, and discuss and coordinate with the township and PennDOT on what improvements they could make to not only mitigate the impact their development has, but also look at improving the existing situation. So what we try to do is not only look at the immediate vicinity of the development, we try to look outside of that and try to improve it, but there's got to be a limit. We can't continue just to go down the road and improve all of these various intersections for 53 townhomes or 72. I will tell you that the 72 townhome development project is, again, expending a significant amount of money, as is the developer associated with this project, to help improve some of the problems that exist today. But at the end of the day, it really should fall, the responsibility should fall on PennDOT, being that they're their roadways. But because they have limited funds and limited resources, it ends up falling on municipalities through the collection of Act 209 dollars, or it falls on developers who are looking to develop a piece of property that they have to expend additional monies to help alleviate some of the problems.
I'm concerned that, in terms of the council, that the council's going to buy into the zoning change to go get these road improvements as an overriding versus single-family homes that were in there.
That's a balance that council has to strike every time we're dealing with
Yes,
this. I can tell you, I've been on council for almost 20 years now, and I've seen various plans for this triangle from PennDOT, probably 3 or 4 variations, and there was probably 3 or 4 before I got on here. And I'm not weighing in on this project, but I can tell you that to wait for PennDOT to do an intersection improvement, we will long be gone before they get there. Every intersection improvement you see in the Limekiln Pike corridor, in the Maple Glen corridor, whether it's that horrible left turn that we used to try to make off of Limekiln Pike to Welsh Road, because I lived here, I grew up here. I knew you'd make the blind left on the Welsh Road to go to the 7-Eleven, and you hoped and you prayed. But that beneficial bank went in and the CVS went in. CVS went in first, but then the beneficial bank went in, and guess what? Lo and behold, we now had a safe left turn. And the developer paid for that. We gave them a little bit of rezoning. They went into a residential property in the next door, and there were some residents that weren't happy with that. They said, we're going to ruin this corridor. Well, you know what? By voting for that zoning change, and that was a small zoning change, I'm not weighing it on this one, but we made a big difference. And then if you go up to Citizens Bank, we held that developer over the coals, and we got a lot of really good improvements. And we've said no to some projects in this area. We said no to a liquor store. I think we said no to another development that might have changed the complexion of Norristown and Welsh Road. And we made a decision at that point, that council made a decision at that point not to do it. And sometimes when you say no to something for what could be a substantive traffic improvement, 5 years down the line, we're still waiting for PennDOT. The traffic's just going to get worse. So we have to make a balance as to whether the intrusion of these additional properties is worth the squeeze, so to speak, in terms of what improvements they're going to give us. So we got a list of the traffic engineers, which I get it too. Like, oh, how could you have this many properties and it's less trips than single family? I've been hearing that forever. So these are all the balances that we have to do, and we take everything that you say to heart. These aren't easy decisions, but there's also long-term view. We can't be the last person to move into Horsham. Everybody here wants to, oftentimes, every time there's a land development, I hear the same thing. And you're going to turn us into Philadelphia. I've been hearing that for 20 years. We haven't turned this into Philadelphia. I think this is a great place to live. But we're going to listen to everything you say, keep on coming up, keep telling us. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from sharing their views because your views matter. But, this isn't an easy job. You can't say no to everything, but you can't say yes to everything. You got to see if what we're ultimately getting in terms of these traffic improvements versus the 53 houses now is worth it. And they're tough decisions. And, that's why we make the big bucks.
I'm not saying they're not.
But I'm not trying to dissuade you. I just want you to know that for a long time we've been looking at it. It frustrates me to see Maple Glen to be the way it is. It should be a thriving small retail area that's walkable. I want this to be more walkable. It's not walkable enough. There's not sidewalks Misty Hollow, their kids should be able to walk to what should be a couple nice retail establishments. CVS is nice, but there's nothing else there to walk to. I'm surprised it hasn't changed, but it hasn't. So, I don't know why there isn't more of a desire to build better retail there. I was hoping the rising tide would lift some boats, but it hasn't yet. So, at some point, maybe that'll happen. I think it's a great area.
It is, absolutely.
It could be better.
One way or the other.
Yeah, it could be better.
It's just I'm concerned
Traffic
over
there's
the
horrible.
holistic view of what's happening around the triangle to make sure that we can actually end up with an improvement, just instead of so much more additional traffic.
I don't think that intersection's safe. When you get people driving at high rates of speed within all this traffic, and sometimes when you add lanes, it makes it safer.
Development scares the bejeebers out of me.
Yeah, it's a bad situation. It's going to have to be fixed at some point.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
John Long, 654 Maple Glen Circle. A couple quick questions. First of all, the
the drive that goes into the townhouse community, is it wide enough to allow for on-street parking?
We're not anticipating any on-street parking with this plan. Certainly, there's a balancing act between cartway width, stormwater runoff, and on-street parking. It is our goal to provide enough guest parking that we wouldn't need on-street parking and could therefore prohibit it.
You're allowing 5 spaces per townhome?
Correct.
And, okay, well, that could be a little tight, especially with, you are building, what, 2,500 square foot to 3,000 square foot homes, is that correct? Thank you. Next question. The open space, if, and this I think would be for the township, if there was a proposal to build single families, how would the open space change? Would they be able to encroach on that more in a single family design, or would that still be required to be open space?
No, they could encroach upon that.
Who's answering that?
Yeah, I can answer that question. If we were to build single-family homes, we would use the entire property for single-family lots.
Okay.
Minus the wetlands and the floodplain.
Minus the wetlands, Mr. Garten, correct.
Now, the wetlands would take up about how much of that space?
The wetlands corridor, as it's currently mapped, really goes through the property, kind of through this corridor. So there is upland areas that are, you can obviously see those from Misty Hollow. Those we would take advantage of for, single-family homes. There would need to be a crossing of that wetland. We need some permits from DEP, but it's that kind of permit activity we do with great regularity.
Okay. Next question. My primary concern is the forest area and the sidewalks. You mentioned the sidewalks apparently are only going to be at the frontage of the property. Currently, is there any way we could get to create a more walkable environment? I can remember there was a study probably 25, 30 years ago that they talked about totally blowing up the whole triangle, right? And they talked about bypass roads around it and things like that. I don't know if you remember that. I do. But, I've been here for over 30 years, and it would be very nice if we could either have paths or sidewalks that would allow people from the Presidential Boulevard, I don't know the name of it, and what have you. So is there any way the council, if they are going to approve this program, to get sidewalks on both sides of the road, all the way to the commercial area on Norristown?
Well, the problem with that is that involves properties that this
Well,
developer doesn't,
they've already space
own.
on the other side for roadway improvements. Can they create a path on that side as well? So the woman who spoke on behalf of the Presidential, and this, she's really not getting what she wants. I don't think she understands.
Because you'd have to run sidewalks from the sidewalks of Presidential across 2 or 3 private properties, which, that.
Being one of them, John.
Oh, well, that's on the other side. That's on the other side, John. I'm talking about in front of yours too.
Yeah, well, how about the one you?
And mine too. Yes, I am.
Well,
I am willing to do so.
Who's going to pay for that?
Well, if it makes a path, I think would be appropriate. I think we need to make the community better. That's all I'm asking. And if the council could use this as a
Frankly,
benefit.
the safer walking is not on Norristown Road. It's, I hate to say it, it's some sort of connector path through this development so that people aren't walking on Norristown Road because
I would agree.
it's already not a safe intersection, and most people aren't going to send to their kids, oh yeah, I mean, I used to ride my bike up Limestone Road, but not anymore, obviously.
Right.
I was a little kid, but, and look, every time we talk about paths, we get the same reaction from half the audience. I don't want these vagrants walking on paths by my property. We hear from the power line truck, oh, you're putting a connector. But then, you know what, when they go sell their house, the first thing they talk about is, we have this great path that connects, I had somebody, they left, but they said, if you connect Roosevelt Presidential Drive, we vote for you every time. I think it was Jill Zippin, by the way. And there's just no way to do it. So
Okay.
we're
Just
always
asking for
looking.
consideration.
Yeah, no, we'd love to make it more
Thank you.
walkable.
Thank you. Consideration.
This is
So
it's-
I would prefer to have the link to Misty Hollow personally. I live in Misty Hollow, and I would prefer to have that link to allow me to walk through. But that's my
You could
preference.
walk to the Brick and Barrel.
Last question. Is there a means by which we can define
You could walk home from the Brick and Barrel.
That's correct. How did you know I might do that?
Well, it's always good to have options.
The reforestation, is there a way we could come up with a specific trees per square feet that would be required in that? Because again, I think you're going to unfortunately lose a lot of trees, because I understand you've got to take down what is in Pearl. There's a lot back there. But we would like to get it back to forest. That would be very important to me and my wife. We currently back up to the cartway that, or the if you will, the travel path of the deer and the fox and everything else. And this is that open area is important to us, because, you know, if we were to build single families, as mentioned, then you're encroaching on that area. I would like to see that open, and I would like to see somehow that within the next 20 years it get back to what it was as a forested area. So can we address that as a volume of trees being placed in, even if they're seedlings?
I don't know if at this moment we can exactly state how it's done, but Mr. Nesbitt mentioned earlier about looking at pre-Hurricane Ida tree counts. So that would be a process where we would be walking the site with the township's landscape consultant and identifying what trees have been killed or they fell over or whatever. And that would be part of our land development process. We could come up with how many trees we're putting in there. So can that be done? Yes. Exactly how that's done right now, I don't know that answer. But yes, it can be done, and it's been a part of the project that we've been aware of since that storm a little over a year ago. And we understand the value and the importance of it. So yes, it can be done.
I would also like to add, Mr. Walker, we didn't do the budget presentation. I'm not asking you for a budget presentation, but there is going to be a plan coming forward to reforest those residents that were impacted by Hurricane Ida with replacement trees?
Yes, sir. We're looking at that for the tree giveaway next fall.
Tree giveaway next fall?
Yes, for those properties that were affected by the tornado.
Maybe the developer would consider, because oftentimes what happens is they have to take down trees. No matter what they do, they have to take down trees, but they have to replace them. And they almost always come back to us and say, you know what, we got no room for trees. We can't put all these trees. So I would encourage a reforestation of Misty Hollow too, because you all lost a lot of trees. And so, you know, if this thing goes forward and we're looking at trees, there should be an ask for Misty Hollows, like maybe we can get some of these trees in our neighborhood too. If that's, I don't know how that works, Mary. Mary's rolling her eyes because that's putting trees on private properties, but that's also another.
Well, this is a perfect situation for you to be able to put a lot of trees back in this area.
Or even in Misty Hollow.
What's that?
Or even in Misty Hollow.
Well, wherever, but here you have the opportunity because it's under discussion currently, and, you know, it's a perfect opportunity to reforest. So thank you for your time, and please give consideration to sidewalks. Even if on one side of the street we do have sidewalks, I actually own the property 2 doors down. I don't live there, but I own a property on Horsham Road. This would impact me personally if I was forced to put a path in front of my property. Maybe not curbs and everything else and a full-fledged sidewalk. I would like it better if the path was moved back instead of the 3 or 4 feet, a buffer from a curb, move back 10 feet because it would be safer for people to walk. But, you know, I encourage that, and that's just my point of view. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine Bedard. I live on Maple Glen Circle. I moved from Montgomeryville, 1995, to the Maple Glen Hollow development. And the reason I moved out of Montgomeryville is because it got very uncivil and hostile on the roads. They packed people in. Not like Philly. I don't expect you to turn into a Philadelphia here at Horsham, but it could turn into a Montgomeryville. And that's, I just want you to, I took reliance on the zoning. I did check the zoning before buying the property. I looked at the zoning around, and I felt good about, you know, the fact that we weren't in Horsham packing a bunch of houses on postage stamp lots. So that's all. I just want to say, please keep it nice in Horsham.
Thank you.
Hey, anybody else?
I'm Mark Alfonso. I live on Misty Hollow Drive. I have two questions, well, two issues. The first one, most of this discussion has been about traffic. And I hear that you're going to jigger with this intersection and the other two intersections a different project's going to take care of. Really tonight, the other project, if it does something with those intersections, great. It's not going to affect, it shouldn't be part of what we're talking about tonight. What we're talking about tonight is this project and how it's going to affect things. And what I hear is, well, we have a solution, we're going to change the intersection configuration. But I maintain, and I'd like to hear what the transportation people say, the problem is the triangle. And as much as I hear we're going to fix the triangle, there's nothing being done to the triangle. You have high-speed roads that go into that triangle. I don't care what the speed limit is. You can't drive faster. You have all those commercial properties. The triangle itself, the road, not the intersections, is a natural choke point. And you're not going to fix that at all. If you open up the intersection I'm talking about here, you're just going to push the problem down to the two intersections on Limekiln Pike. So, you know, unless you fix the amount of traffic going through there, and all I've heard tonight is that's going to incrementally increase. And, you know, it is going to get worse because of the other development. Let's say that's another incremental increase. The fact that they're offering an improvement for the intersection is not of any value. I mean, it's value to the people who live in Norristown Road. It's not of any value to anybody driving through the township. It's not putting it's not going to make it any safer. Heard you talk about the CVS improving the safety. Well, it didn't improve the throughput, which is really the discussion, majority of the discussion tonight. So I haven't heard a single thing about how you're going to really make the throughput better going through the triangle.
Okay. So as far as the throughput is concerned, obviously that's a fixed quantity, right? We know how much traffic is out there today and how much is going through the intersections. The improvement that's being proposed as part of this development is a significant improvement in that on its own, if this were zoned to allow for townhouses, this improvement wouldn't be necessary for this development based on the amount of traffic that is being generated. There may be some tweaks that would be needed here and there, but not to the extent of what's being proposed in conjunction with this plan. So from a throughput standpoint, when we provide those improvements, even if it's just one leg of the triangle, when we provide those improvements, and being that those intersections are all coordinated, it allows us to, when we reduce that queue, it allows us to reallocate time to various intersections. So it allows us to tweak those other intersections to help alleviate some of the congestion that currently exists. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that this development and the other development are fixing the problems. The issue at the triangle is a much bigger problem. It's a much bigger fix is necessary. And I think Mr. Nesbitt had mentioned the various plans he's seen from PennDOT with respect to the triangle. I believe one of the gentlemen that just spoke earlier talked about blowing up the triangle completely and bypass roads. So there's the widening that we're doing in conjunction with this development, the improvements that are being in conjunction with the other development in Upper Dublin are not meant to solve the issues. What it's meant to do is try to improve the conditions beyond what exists today, and then beyond what would exist in the future once these developments are occupied and there's vehicles in and out. So I don't want anyone to get the impression that we're sitting here talking about fixing the problems between these two developments. We're talking about trying to provide for improvements to improve the situation. And when I do widening on one leg, like I mentioned, we're able to tweak the other intersections. When they redo the intersection at Norristown Road and Limekiln Pike, or Limekiln, that's a significant improvement. It also benefits the triangle and also benefits this intersection as well, because then it allows us to further retime the signals or further allocate timing on the various improvements or various approaches.
But I think you're making my point in that you're not doing anything to the triangle, and so there's no increase of flow going through the triangle that's going to happen. It's going to be the same that it is today. It's just going to be a little bit nicer getting into the slower moving triangle.
No, I mean, the only way to reduce the throughput is take cars off the road.
Well, but
So
if you don't increase the throughput, then you're not going to impact the situation of what enters that choked off throughput.
So by virtue of the fact that the one exhibit that I showed is reducing the queue, what that means is that we are increasing the throughput. There's not as many cars stacked waiting to get through the intersection because we're able to get more cars through the intersection. And that just doesn't
You can't get
affect.
them through the triangle. You're just moving it down to the other two intersections. Unless you fix that triangle, which I understand how big of a deal that would be, you're not going to make a difference. You're just going to move it around. There's three places things can back up. Well, it's more, yeah, 3 intersections. They're still going to back up because of what they have to go into.
I will agree to disagree. I would say, again, that the other development in Upper Dublin that is currently moving forward will provide for significant improvements. If this development moves forward, it will provide for significant improvements.
So
Combining, if I may, combining those two will improve the situation that exists at the triangle today. We're not looking to solve it. We can't solve it. That's way beyond our means and way beyond the ability that we have. But we are looking to improve the operations, the safety, the throughput, get more cars through, reduce the queues. Are both of those developments combined going to eliminate the queues, eliminate all the problems at that triangle? Absolutely not. But we're looking to improve the situation that exists today.
Okay, so let's say we agree to disagree. I mean, I'm not going to believe it unless I saw a model of what goes on through there, but that's fair enough. But you said you're not going to solve the problems. This is the second part of what I wanted to bring up. We're really here today to talk about justification of a variance. You just don't get a variance because I want a variance. So the last meeting we had, you had so many buildings you were going to build, and now you increase that by 30% and say, see, we're still going to give you the same improvement in any intersection. But, you know, we can argue if that intersection is going to be an improvement. But I guess my question is, why should the people that live around here and the council approve a variance? What is the quid pro quo?
Well, I'll let Kristen answer. I believe everything we've said tonight is.
I heard two things, open space and intersection. But what is the reason for your variance? Is it just economics?
We're not here for a variance.
Excuse me, it's hard to hear with the talk in the back.
We've not applied for a variance.
You said you were going to. That was the beginning of this meeting that was
I
stated.
did not use the word variance, sir. A variance is an application to the zoning hearing board, and that is a quasi-judicial body, and there's a body of law that supports when and how a variance should be granted. Things like property being miszoned, property that shouldn't be zoned R3 next to commercial development. There are reasons for a variance in front of the zoning hearing board. We didn't ask for that. We're here asking council to look at this from a legislative point of view, a text amendment that would allow a map change, that would allow this development, and we are suggesting that it makes sense because a traditional zone is needed here. That single-family detached dwellings against commercial development is not something that developers are interested in because it doesn't have value. However, in order to entice any municipality to make a map change, what's in it for the municipality? Why should we do it? But for facing a legal challenge from somebody who owns a property and thinks it's miszoned. And it is, we want to do our share at this intersection that we don't have to do. No developer that does a by-right plan, if they were going to do single-family detached dwellings, would have to touch the intersection of Welsh and Norristown. Not required. It's off-site. So we're looking at it as, what can we do to better an existing bad situation? We're a drop in the bucket when it comes to traffic. 22 trips in the morning is nothing when you look at the volumes that are on this road. So we looked at, what can we do to do our share to mitigate an existing problem above and beyond what we would have to do for our development.
So you just said variance, even though you said you weren't applying for a variance. Is it just that
It's a legal vernacular, so maybe you weren't following
You're not
me.
getting a legal variance, but you just want a zoning change?
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's exactly
Okay.
correct.
Fair enough. But there is a quid pro quo involved with that. You just don't give those out.
No, zoning changes are made when the governing body, in this case council, determines that it is in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the community to make that zoning change.
Fair enough, thank you. So, anyway, I'd just like you to make the argument to the people in the council, they're very short, why we should accept an intersection in exchange for high-density housing. And I'll sit down.
I think I've said enough, thank you.
My name's Robin Pining, I live
The mic,
in
please.
Oxford Circle.
Up to the mic if you would, sorry.
Robin Pining, I live at Oxford Circle.
What's your house number?
What's your 16.
16, thank you.
When you did the traffic, whatever, did you go as far down as Herman and Whitmer?
I did not.
Did not. Okay, then my question goes to council. I spent 15 years coming down Downey Drive, going right on Herman, and trying to make a left-hand turn onto Norristown Road. And what usually happens when that traffic light went in is the people at rush hour time, they'll just pile up. So I can't even make my turn. I would wait 2, maybe 3 red lights to get through there. And I would like to know if you're going to put anything there that will give me, people actually have to stop, don't, take all the intersections so I can't make my left.
The double light there, right?
Yep, the double light.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It's really bad, and it's actually worse since COVID. So that's all I have to say about traffic. But it's just going to pile up. I go down Norristown Road all the time, and it's.
Yeah, again, Norristown Road being a state road, the signalization, who handles that signals there? PennDOT, right?
PennDOT, but yes, PennDOT is Norristown Road.
So if they're not we talk about in sync a lot, because a lot of the lights that we have throughout the township through different programs that we run with PennDOT are in sync.
Yeah, we have looked at that intersection, those 2 intersections, and there's really nothing at all we can do unless we do something major. It would involve taking 3 to 4 homes, total take of homes, to fix both Whitmer and Norristown and Herman. So we have looked at it. We've looked at technology with the traffic signals to see if that would help. We've looked at everything. It's maxed out. The 2 intersections are maxed out. Without any road widening, which would take homes, there's not much that can be done at those 2 intersections.
So what about putting a cop there for when you have 5 cars sitting in the intersection when they should be back at the red light?
Look, I see that as I go through there a lot myself, and I experience that same problem. It is frustrating. I wish we could do something about that. But fortunately, as Bill stated, our hands are a little tied with that one. Sure.
Hi, good evening. Council, thanks for the opportunity to speak in front of you. Thanks to my neighbors. What a great turnout from the last time we met, June 6th. I think we probably had about half the folks here, and we only had 1 police officer, so we got 2 tonight.
I need your name and address.
I was getting
We're going to
that.
get them after.
So my name is Mike Sullivan, and Kristen, you may want to take this down. My address is 656 Maple Glen Circle. I'll be honest with you. I was kind of agnostic about this development up until about 10 minutes ago. And 10 minutes ago, my mind changed. And it's gone to against this development. And I'll tell you why. It just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. And I gotta say, Teresa, Greg, Mark, Bill, Sean, we voted for you to move Horsham forward. In my opinion, this townhome project does not do that. I don't like Horsham Township. I love Horsham Township. And this isn't right for Horsham Township. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Dave Robinson, 603 Misty Hollow Drive. Again, thank you all for this opportunity. A quality of life concern that has occurred to me that hasn't been discussed, something sort of indirect. I like to go to the Giant for food shopping, or Maple Glen Pizza for when we have to quick grab a bite to eat. I think that's going to get really, really difficult with more and more people living in this immediate neighborhood. So I think that in addition to all the other concerns, I think that it's going to become very difficult to get anywhere in Maple Glen. That's just my concern.
Okay. So, oh, we got one more. It's okay.
Craig Zandier, 37 Downey Drive. I look at something like this, and this is smart development. This is taking advantage of a parcel that is unused, that right now, honestly, you said it yourself, if you don't build townhouses, you're not building single family. So if you want to leave it looking like a pile of sticks for the next 20 years till something grows through it, we could do that. Or we could turn it into something that's usable, something that's getting reforested, something that is providing some connection to the community, back through the community. If nothing gets built there, traffic's not going to get any better. If single-family houses get built there, traffic's not going to get any better. I live in Windmere Downs. There's 250 houses in that neighborhood. We have two entrances, both sides of the neighborhood. I've sat in traffic there behind maybe 2 cars to get out. They're 22, 25, 53 trips, if you want to call it that. That's not really going to do anything for that neighborhood. It's the traffic that's on Norristown Road that's the problem. It's the people passing through that corridor. This isn't going to change that. Those people are still driving through there every single day. So for me, I look at this. It's 53 very nice townhouses that are adding to our tax base. They're adding to our, they're alleviating some of my tax debt. Do you think I'm not paying for this intersection? You guys aren't going to come through here and ask for additional tax funding to change this intersection. It's going to have to come from people like developers. This is how it works. Totally in favor. I think this works very well for this area, to improve this area, and provides some additional residential improvement to that area without looking towards additional large single-family houses. Thank you.
Oh, come on, you can at least clap a little bit.
Okay. Well, again, first of all, thank you for your presentation. Very well put together. Thank the audience for their input. As Greg had mentioned, we do value everyone's opinion. We do take it to heart. We do live here. We are your neighbors. We travel the same roads that you travel. And anytime a development comes in like this, and we've had, over the years, several developments proposed for this project, or for this piece of land, that never made it past the front door. They were that bad. So in my opinion, and I'm not saying this is something I agree with yet, I'm just saying that out of all the ones I've seen, this is probably the best one that we've seen come down the road. And that's why we brought it to a public meeting, so that we could hear from the neighbors, and we encourage the developer to talk to the neighbors and get their opinions as to how to make this a better development and a more improved project. So as far as land development goes, like sidewalk, like we talked about sidewalks and reforestation, things like that, those items are always get addressed after the fact. They get addressed during land development. Right now, what our focus will be on is just the rezoning itself. If we feel like the rezoning is worth going through the next project, then we focus on parking and sidewalks and trees. All that stuff gets done down the road. Right now, we have to focus on whether or not we want to see this project move forward to the next step. There was a question about the road widening and easements that are required on Norristown Road. If they're not acquired, the project won't happen because we need the road widening. So unless that happens, the project wouldn't make any sense to us. So that's another hurdle that the developer still has to go through. So at this point, Bill, we're just in a holding pattern right now to see, from your standpoint, if there's any changes that you'd like to make down the road after listening to the comments, if there's anything additional that you would like to do or to try to enhance the project, make the project a little better for the people that have made the comments. That, I guess the ball's in your court now to do your part, and then our part of it is to review all this and see how we feel, going forward. Mary, you have something you'd like to add to that?
I just thought
Because I'm just rambling at this point.
Maybe they'd want to know what the next step is.
I was getting to that next.
Oh,
And so I was done rambling, then I was going to go to Bill and say, so where are we going from here?
Well, the next step is to take all the input that you received tonight, the presentation from the developer, all the public comment that you received, and for council, not tonight, but digest everything, and then make a decision if you want to proceed with drafting a text amendment or rezoning ordinance.
In which case we'd have to go to a public hearing?
Yes, sir.
In which case you'd be back again with your input if we go to the next step, which would be a public hearing.
Mary.
Right, and if council decided it wanted to entertain consideration of a zoning ordinance that would allow townhouses in this zoning district or on this property, there would be legal notices published. Mr. Walker would also send out notice to the property owners, the same property owners that you sent notice to this evening, and you would have another opportunity to come in and make comments to council prior to consideration of adoption of any ordinance. This is the very first step on a path.
Okay, anybody have any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
Council to now vote against this project, or does it have to go to the next step?
Well, it doesn't have to go to a next step. We have to take all this into consideration and decide whether we want it to move forward to the next step.
Stop it after if you wanted to.
We're not, yeah, I guess we could. But I don't think it would be fair to just, at this point, make that decision. I think we have to digest. There was a lot of information tonight, a lot of good information.
There were also a lot of issues that were raised that it would be good to get. We don't have a landscape architect here this evening. And the questions about reforesting the open space and the acquisition of the easements are things that you don't know sitting here tonight, so to vote tonight would probably be premature.
So we'll take it in consideration, and I guess we'll get back to you and let you know what we're going to do, right? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, without any further ado, meeting adjourned.